first one of the week. Let's get going. And we start with the latest farcical development in the government's bid to send migrants to Rwanda. James Cleverly was in the African country earlier this month to sign a new treaty, of course, but it's emerged that airlines have now refused to sign contracts to take part in the government's flagship asylum policy. Firms are worried about damage to their reputations from being involved in case they get cancelled by the cancel culture mob, and the Home Office says it has robust plans for flights to Rwanda despite that. Well, I'm joined now by our political editor, Christopher Hope. Chris, good afternoon to you. Always a pleasure. Here we go again, another round of farce. It's not surprising on the face of it that private companies don't want to be involved. Of course, there'd be all sorts of clamours to cancel them, but you do think that the government would have thought about this a bit sooner and got a few MOD planes lined up from RAF bases, don't you?
Well, Martin, if nothing else, it's a reflection of the uncertainty surrounding this Rwanda plan. Don't forget it was subject to challenge in the Supreme Court after the ECHR ruled it out of order. That's the European Court of Human Rights. The idea, of course, is to send back legally arrived migrants who come here to Rwanda, 5,000 miles away, to be processed and to stay there. Essentially, it's a deportation plan rather than an offshore processing plan, which other countries in Europe are trying to do. Now, the reports at the weekend are that so far no commercial operator has stepped up to agree to do this plan. That's caused concern amongst, of course, the critics, of which are many, of this plan. The Home Office, for its part, says the following: "This is not a reflection of reality. If and when the bill goes through, there will be aircraft flights." Now, what that means is the Rwanda bill, as we know from the dramas last Tuesday in the Commons, when it passed second reading by a majority of 44, is facing a committee of the whole House of Commons amendments, all sorts of ways to try and weaken it by the left of the Tory party and, of course, the opposition parties. That's early in January. Following that, it should go through to the Lords. The Lords may try and reject it entirely, send it back to the Commons, and it may be an issue of ping-pong between the two different houses. All that means is this idea, this bill, this law won't come into force until probably the late spring at the earliest. Now, the PM, Mr. Sunak, has told us he thinks that planes can take off from May time. That's late spring. We wait and see if that will happen. And, of course, until then, there are no contracts made. I mean, to be fair to the Home Office, if they sign a contract now with a commercial operator and then no flights took place, how would that look? Probably even worse than having no flights arranged at the moment. I mean, of course, there is, of course, ways to make it happen through RAF flights from military airfields. Right now, we're told that money could be being spent, or maybe being spent shortly, on securing the perimeter of some of these airfields, because there's no question, if this goes through the House of Lords, as it should do eventually, this will become a very big fight in the early summer when flights maybe start to take off and protesters don't want them to. Martin.
Yeah, and Chris, as you say, RAF Boscombe Down is the most likely of the airfields, but local police say it's going to cost around 20 million quid to secure the perimeter, because, of course, these airports aren't set up to be secure compounds, and for this they would need to be so, because, of course, the world and their uncle from the Liberal side of the spectrum will be down there to try and stop these flights taking off. I don't think we should be having a go at Rishi Sunak here, though. I think this should have been sorted out, surely, by people lower down the food chain than him. It's all fair and well. Rishi has to get the amendment through, get the bill through, but it's not his job to sort out where these things take off from. This should have been thought through more clearly, and we should have had some joined-up thinking, surely, Chris?
Yeah, you might think that. I mean, to be fair to the government, if they spent money now, though, Martin, on commercial flights, then the flights never took off. That would add to the £240 million spent already in Rwanda, preparing buildings, etc., and providing legal support for when they start processing migrants as they are sent back there. So I can see the problem that they've got there, but it's certainly, and also I can see and understand from the point of view of the commercial operators, they don't want to face a Twitter storm from all of their best friends on Twitter having a go at them for not allowing flights to take off. So I can see the problem. I use friends there slightly sarcastically because I think people would be piling in on this one and trying to attack people's businesses if they got involved too early. So I would expect the MOD to take the strain initially, then as it becomes more regular, these flights, commercial operators to step up then.
And Chris, we were just showing pictures on screen there of Rishi Sunak talking to Giorgia Meloni, of course, the immigration conference in Italy at the weekend. And the BBC have waded into this, calling it a far-right gathering. Now, the BBC, of course, were very slow. In fact, I don't think they still have condemned Hamas as terrorists, yet they're calling our own Prime Minister far-right. Feels a bit below the belt, don't you think?
Yeah, well, the BBC always has issues with its reporting sometimes, and trying to be impartial. On the issue of Hamas, they won't call it a terrorist group. What they will say, it's been prescribed as a terrorist group in the UK and other countries. That's what they say about that. Otherwise, it's militants normally. With this situation, yeah, it was a right-wing conference in the same way you might have a left-wing Labour Party conference organised by Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Premier, which the PM went to speak at it. There's common cause with Israel, as we were discussing on Friday, isn't there, Martin, over migration. And, of course, the leader of Albania was there at the same time. I think it's quite clever politics by Mr Sunak. He's trying to find some friends to find common cause within the EU bloc. And Italy has got its issue with illegal migration, and we have an issue here. So why not discuss how to make it work better? And also, they got on quite well, maybe generationally, the same kind of age. They met at the G20 in Delhi when I was out there with the Prime Minister, and they got on well there. So I think the PM is doing soft diplomacy there, and that's why he's there. But describe it as a far-right conference, I don't think is right. It's a right-wing one, yes, but then you have left wings too. You know, say far right, far left is a bit silly.
Yeah, Chris Hope, superb as ever. I totally agree. They actually called it a far-right rally, and we know what they mean by that. They want to give it the echoes of the Third Reich. Ridiculous. You can say many things about Rishi Sunak. Far-right is not one of them.